And here's the last thing I'm going to say, and it goes to story. There's good, better, best when it comes to stories. I just want to toss out one thing because I want you to just hear how stories can take a detour and bring you further away from where you're trying to get. Irving steals all the ink bottles he can find and proudly reports his catch by saying his last name, and that teaches IR. Now, that's a story for sure, but it's not rooted in anything kids would understand because we don't catch ink bottles. We don't know what ink bottles are. If we did, we wouldn't catch them. We wouldn't put them in a net. And when we're excited or proud of ourselves, we don't yell out our own name and go, Katie. We don't do any of those things. And if you can keep track of that, you know what you walk away with? The sound. What about the ER and the UR? Like we could knock out all of those instantly by connecting it with something kids already know. And now we've got all three.
Hi kids, do you want to know about the secrets about these? So ER, IR, UR. When they get together, they hop in their cars, they drive crazy, and they say, yeah. So, what they do, driving their cars crazy. But when you grow up, you don't do that.
As it stands, we actually have to learn them separately. There's two other crazy stories to get the other two sounds, to get all three. And you're told on your chart that you want to avoid moving from one to the other until they show mastery of the first. So for children who don't, put them in an intervention plan. This is bizarre to me. Why should my inability to remember Irving limit my ability to move on to whatever the crazy story is going to be for ER? And why should I have to have intervention just because I'm not able to use this stuff to actually read and write when the story itself is quite a challenge to keep track of and make sense of, let alone why is one more important than the other? Why do I need to have mastery of one before I can have the other? If you give them to me in a way where I can instantly have access to them, the more I have, the more sense I can make of text that's all around me. So we cut off our nose to spite our face if we hold things back on purpose. It's just fascinating. And I'll just say like one more here. From the salty waters, walrus splashes Apple Annie's face and she complains, oh, that's awful. Again, you get the AW, what about the AU? And then you have to keep track of things like a walrus and Apple Annie or Annie whoever and salty water wells. And I mean, I'd almost just rather memorize the phonics pattern. And there are grade level walls, which means you don't actually teach all of these. You have grade specific ones that they get at certain times. So this is how things aren't always the same. Every story isn't any story. When you're going to use a story to teach, you really want to think about with it. And it's not just giving them a little story or a little trick. It's not that at all. There's a whole nother level of power that we're going to look at as to going with what they know, using what they already understand, taking advantage of existing patterns of understanding to connect with content they've never seen before. Now, here's how this happened. Here's how that 4-year-old was able to instantly give me back the sound when I showed her the symbol, or the symbol when I showed her the sound. So this is what she did. Her brain development is back to front. So the brain develops back to front. By back to front, the earlier developing area of the brain that we're talking about is the social emotional systems, the feeling-based networks. So that is the area of the brain that we're actually tapping with this. The higher level executive processing center is what you see toward the front. It is the part of the brain that's going to connect these as sounds with symbols and then identify additional letters that come into play as a sequence that then creates what's called a phonics pattern. And then they have to segment words in order to hear the sound. When that little girl gave me back that sound, she wasn't thinking lip position, tongue position, mouth shape sounds like. She was feeling a feeling, and the feeling created the sound. Ah, that's all she did. She just felt the feeling, and then the sound came out. Totally different area of the brain retrieving that than if she would have had to think along the lines of traditional instruction, which is which word, which sound, what's the mouth shape? Is it tongue position, lip position, ah, as in August, awesome, awful, or is it ah, as in apple, or blah, 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 or EUEW, or AUAW, or OUOW. All of those different patterns and higher level academic concepts that our kids certainly in kindergarten are not ready for. And that's why this takes 3 to 4 years to go through the back door or the front door. But when you go through the back door, you don't have to rely on any of that being in place. All of those holes, if you're working with upper grade learners, are irrelevant because you're slipping something in a place that is already working, already primed, already developed. The social emotional systems are actually the areas kids use to tattle with. They're also the areas that let them know how it feels when no one plays with them or when they get to be the line leader. It's the way they can keep track of who the line leader is, who the line leader was, who got fired, what the punishment was, what the principal said they were going to do. All the things that they keep track of and drive your substitute crazy with come from that area of the brain. That area of the brain is very capable of maintaining a lot of information and actually using it to process new information. Now, here's the rub. How do we cheat? How do we tap into that part of the brain when obviously that is not the part of the brain that's supposed to be kicking in to capture this skill? Letters and sounds in phonics have nothing to do with feeling. You should feel nothing when you're looking or talking about letters and sounds, unless we cheat. Brain plasticity lets us play with what areas of the brain we can engage or trigger based on how we encode or wrap up the content. So if we want to wrap up letters and sounds with a social, emotional, feeling-based disguise, we can trick that area of the brain into engaging and actually grabbing and keeping that information and retrieving it to give back. That's why when the little girl gave us the sound back, she had the same head tilt, she had the same arms up like this, she had the same kind of wiggle, and the same vocal inflection, because it was coming from the area of the brain that connected with that feeling, that understood that connection. Now, once we move it in there, once we front load that code, now we have an opportunity to start building that higher level thinking network because we've got some meat to play with. We've got some opportunities now to bait the brain by pointing out things when we spot secrets. I spotted a secret in our math direction. Does anybody see that? Or I spotted the word paw. I see a secret in the title of our book that we're reading right now, because this is my key to unlock that door and thousands of other doors. So that's where you have flexibility in who does what when, because you're so far ahead of the game. There's no worry. There's no pressure. Developmentally, they can wake up and smell the coffee whenever they darn well please. It's like a buffet, and you're just laying these things out on a buffet in case you need them. Cake's over there. If you have a hankering for it, go for it. If you want some salad, it's over there. Maybe you want some steak and some chicken. It's all here. Grab what you need. All I know for sure is you're going to need it because we're going to see it. It's going to be everywhere. Regardless of whether we teach kindergarten or not, these letters come together in words that we have to actually read. Now, we don't usually read them. What we do is memorize them. The word the word how, the word saw, the word she, the word are, the word were. We are reading words that have phonics patterns in them that we're not going to teach for 2 more years. And we're not even going to teach them. Second grade teachers can teach them. But we have to read them. We're stuck holding the bag, trying to read words that we don't have skills to decode. And therein lies all the memorization that we do and why we are pulling our hair out in kindergarten, first grade, trying to get all these darn sight words under our belt when most of those we can actually read. Got it. And she could teach it to your kids. Also, pay attention to what she says at the end because it shows where this lives in her brain. We're talking first week of kindergarten, and this skill is supposed to be taught in second grade. So I want you to watch it and then ask yourself, why wait? Why wait? She wasn't even taught it, and she's got it, and she could teach it to your kids. Also, pay attention to what she says at the end because it shows where this lives in her brain.
Hi, kids. Do you want to know about the secrets about these? So, E-R-I-R-U-R. When they get together, they hop in their cars, they drive crazy, and they say, yeah. So, what they do, driving their cars crazy. But when you grow up, you don't do that.
I love that public service announcement that she just kind of threw in there at the end, because what that does is it shows you where this lives in her brain. This does not live in the same place as phonics rules that were learned on workbook page 14. This does not live where the R-controlled vowels as a phonics skill live. This lives in a part of her brain that has a deep and already existing understanding of what responsible behavior looks like, what you're supposed to do, and what happens if you don't do it and you have to slam on your brakes. It's hard to forget what you already know, and you don't have to memorize what you already understand.